So in this part we'll speak about how to illuminate your characters using 3-point lighting, which is a classic Hollywood scheme when you've got them fully rigged and textured like this. So the first thing you want to do is create a camera, which you can do either through the shelf or you can go into cameras and create camera, and you'll get a manipulator up. Just like when you're aiming lights, you can use this to aim your camera. But a much better way of doing this would be to go into your perspective view and set your perspective view to be your camera view. And in this way you can just pan around and zoom until you get a good view that you're happy with. So 3-point lighting is shot specific, not scene specific. So I've already got a camera here that I'm going to open. So this is why you need to render through a camera. So if we go in now, you want to make sure you start in darkness. So turn off default illumination and you can see it goes all dark here. So this is your starting point. And if we go in and look at all our viewports here, I'm going to show you how you set your lights up properly. So I've already created my lights. So the first light you want to create is your key light. And if you look at the viewports here, you can see that I've aimed it. So it's slightly offset. There's my camera. And here you have my light. And also if you look in the front view here, you can see that you want your light to be set at about 45-degree angle higher than your camera. So I'm going to turn my light on. So your key light is your main illumination for your subject, and it should be your shadow casting light as well. So this is the light that will set your light direction. And when you have this light in your scene, it should look fairly close to what it will do in the very end when you've added your other lights. So you want to stop and test render here. And you can see now you need to set your render view to render through your camera. So if you go to render here, and we'll just set it to my camera. And now you can see I've got fairly good illumination. You want to leave some areas in darkness, and I've got the shadows here falling from my object. So you need to aim your key light right so you get your shadows falling in the right place. And the second light you want to create is a fill light. And what a fill light does is that it will soften the illumination provided by your key light. So you can see here you want to offset this one to the other side of your camera, and also you want it to be a lot lower than your key light. So you can set it to about the same height as your subject, but it needs to be lower. So your intensity for your fill light should be about half the intensity of your key light. And you should not use any shadows on this light, because we only want shadows from the key lights. And if you're working with darker areas, you can set your intensities even lower if you want very shadowy areas for your fill light. So, but half, and then take it down from there. So you can see now we've got a lot softer shadows. And you can see areas that were before in darkness are receiving a lot more illumination now. So the final light we're going to talk about now is the rim light, and we do this to make our subject pop out from the background. So you want to add a rim light at the very, very back, opposite your camera. If you look at mine here, you can see I've got my camera here, and on the opposite side I've got my rim light. And usually you'll need to set it up quite high. So aiming rim lights can be quite difficult. And you can set your intensity of your rim light as high as you want it. I'm going to set mine to 0.5 here, but you can keep it at 1 or take it up even higher if you want to, because all you're trying to do is boost this glistering sense in the back of your object. So you can see now I'm getting a bright illumination here, a few pixels. It should be like a halo effect when you're talking about rim lights. Otherwise it's a backlight, a form of kick light. So I'm having a problem though. You can see here that my light's going through my material and it's appearing where I don't really want. any bright specular areas. So for this reason, you'll need your rim light to cast shadows most of the time. And if you look here now, you can see I have a problem because these shadows are appearing everywhere. So I only want the shadows from my key light. So what I can do now is that I can go in and I can light link my rim light to illuminate the T-Rex only. So I'll link it away from the floor plane. So you can see now when illuminates by default is on, everything's illuminated. And if I turn it off, I can just click here to link it to the T-Rex only. If we go in and render now, you can see our shadows have disappeared. And we've got only the shadows from the key light. And we've got a nice halo effect here. Sometimes you might want to use multiple rim lights, so you'll need to set up several lights in the back and aim them. And in the same way you're using one fill light, you can use several fill lights too, and put them a few degrees off close to each other. So this depends on what you're trying to achieve, but you don't necessarily want just one light in one position. So here you can see this is my spec light. So you can use these lights. I've got it exactly in the same position as my key light. And if you look now, I'm going to use this one only to boost specular highlights in my object. So I'll set it to emit specular only. And therefore you can do this because you couldn't turn your intensities for your key lights up a lot higher, but if you wanted to get a glistering sense, you could use separate spec lights in the same position as your key lights as well. So you can see the difference here. I think I preferred mine without the specular light here. But that's some ways you can get fairly good illumination. You can see with just the key light. And now we've managed to soften the shadows a bit with our fill light. And finally we've added a rim light here. And here is the spec light should you want it. So that's how you can light your characters up in a fast and simple way.